We're going to go into a few things this morning which will form a basis for an open discussion and questions if you have them, so that we can all take part in it. The mind is very flexible, and it can work in many fascinating ways, which, if we let it function normally as it should, can help us to wake up. You're not awake. None of you here are awake. You may think you are. You're not awake at all. You don't know what it means to be awake. This is why we're here, which means a lot of hard work. Now, one of the ways in which the mind can work, and it works in interesting opposites, is that at certain times when you're a passenger in a car or you're walking around your home, you can give your attention to one thing, then another, then another. You're walking just into the kitchen and you see the time, you see the cake, you see the curtain is a little mixed up. You want to straighten it out. At certain times you can give your attention bang, 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 one thing after another, right? You've done this. And this is quite necessary. Otherwise you wouldn't be able to function either inwardly or outwardly, because all kind of things are going on. When you drive your car, you have to constantly shift your attention. So there are times when you're in that state of mind. This meeting here is not one of those times. I have watched some of you in many of these talks, and I've seen your eyes wandering around, and I knew that you weren't here at all. Now is the time, right now, in this meeting, to give full and sustained attention to what you're hearing, to what we're going to talk about in general. Just listen to it. Now, having given your attention, there's another thing you have to add to it. You have to think about this quite deeply. To listen properly, to listen with sustained attention, so that you can get something from it, you have to be absent from your usual ways of thinking, from what you call yourself. If you're going to listen in order to get something for what you call yourself, what you have called yourself, then you won't hear anything. You'll be deaf to it. And you'll sit here casually, maybe and relaxed, and you'll listen for a while, and then your mind will wander somewhere else. You don't understand at all that this is for you. What you're going to hear is for what you really want. Therefore, get yourselves out of the way as you give this sustained attention. Do two things at once. Try to do just one of them if you can. Because if you're judging things according to what you've already been taught, then you won't get it. In other words, your usual self, and by the way, this self has made pretty much of a mess of your life, hasn't it? Huh? You know it has. So you listen today with this usual, nervous, jumpy, insistent self out of the way. Then you will hear something new for the first time in your life. Because you have opened the door by getting all this, you've piled up all this trash in front of the door. All your ideas, all your comparisons. Trying to get something that you shouldn't be trying to get at all, because it will give you nothing at all. Will you do those two things? Do you remember what they were? Give your attention and get yourself out of the way, so that something different can start to come awake in here. So you begin to feel something as well as hear something. Then you will see yourself change. Really change. And not just think you've changed because you've heard a lecture or read a book. But you will change. And since you are your world, indeed, your entire world will change. Your relations with the people in your life, with your work, that work which you find so boring maybe, or that you're worried about losing. You are here, I hope, because you want to change everything. Everything, which means a lot of hard work. and a lot of listening without the interference from your past. Even all those bad things you have done in your past, even that can't color what you're hearing today. Remember all those bad things you did, which you feel ashamed of? Forget it. Or all the good things you've done, which you called good and which weren't good at all because they didn't do a single thing for you. Look at your life as it is, right as you're sitting here now. You know what it's like. So do I. We're here to change all that. So with those two preliminaries, I want to tell you what is separating you from being one with yourself, from being authentically happy, from being out of the mess, from being afraid of people, from being afraid of anything at all. I want to tell you what it is, and it's so simple and so complex at the same time. What separates you from being who and what you really want to be and what you can be, what separates you is just one thing, and that is an idea, a thought. See, you don't meet daily life. You don't meet a hostile person, for example, or a tough situation, or you don't meet a loss of some kind, or you don't meet the fact that you're growing older. You don't meet it purely at all, because the minute you notice yourself in the mirror that you're growing older, or your friend says, I don't want to see you anymore, or you get the traffic ticket or whatever, probably because you weren't paying attention to your driving when you should have been. When all these things happen, you always make the same mistake that you've been making all your life, which has been separating you from A, the capital letter A, the answer. And we'll see what the mistake is, and then we'll see how to correct it. Whenever anything happens to you that makes you unhappy, whenever a challenge comes to you from the outer world, or even a challenge from the inner world, like you feel guilty, you make the mistake of inserting a thought into the blank space that should be there. You say something to hurt my feeling, I get fired, whatever it might be, I have had the challenge, right? Something has happened to me. Unless I'm wide awake, unless I've studied this and I understand this, I am always going to make a mistake. The mistake is, now listen, this is very logical, listen to this. The mistake is, I rush in, I grab an idea and put this idea between me and what happened to me. Because I'm afraid. You're angry with me, you're going to leave me, you're going to fire me. Because I'm a mechanical machine, the only reaction I've ever known is to get angry and upset and to think. And I get the thought in there, and it can be one of 1,000. You've done it all your life, we've all done it. You name the thought that goes in when you meet a challenge that upsets you. You lose the business commission. You quarrel with your wife. You always get a thought in there. Look, follow it one step at a time. If you don't see the whole, follow one step at a time. The challenge comes up, and you immediately, mechanically, put a thought in there. That thought destroys all possibility of you being free of that challenge, whatever it is. What kind of thoughts? It could be a defensive one, and if you have a defensive thought, the next second you will have an offensive one, because they are opposites. They will always be there. 1 minute, you're humble, humble. Beware of a humble man. You're humble 1 minute, and the next minute you're going to clobber the man, right? Both are on the same level of thinking. If you could see this much this morning, just this much, you'd be on the way. But it's a long way. So putting an idea of any kind between me and the experience is what ties me to it, keeps me in it, and therefore I'm destroyed by it, when there wasn't any need for it to destroy me at all. But I never heard these such things before. I didn't know that I could use my mind in a different way so that when this challenge comes up, I don't care what it is, no matter what it is, I could not insert a protective or aggressive or jealous or hateful or anxious thought in there to protect me. Now let's find out why I put a thought in there at all when a challenge comes in. I quickly grab the first thought I can and put it in here because without the thought, I don't exist at all. Therefore, I put the thought in there to protect what I call me. See? You must respect me. You must respect. Who on earth are you talking about when you say you must respect me? You don't exist at all like that. I demand respect. Who demands respect? That's a thought. You must respect me. You must behave as I want you to. You must give me what I want. Have you ever asked yourself, who is in back of all this? There isn't anyone back there. And when you see this, you're out of it. There is no one there at all. Boy, now you're going to have to face it, aren't you? You're going to have to face that this wonderful person, or this terrible person, or this dynamic person, or this successful person, or this kindly person, depends on what role you're playing, is just a thought. There's no existence at all. None. But you've been playing the game so long, you take the fantasy as the reality. And all your friends and all your relatives are playing the game with you so that you can help keep their phony images in place. And so we destroy each other, not knowing why we're doing it. So what can I do? I can begin to, oh, good Lord, it's years of hard work. But I have to start, don't I? Do you understand? Maybe I better interrupt here a little bit. Do you understand that this is the total answer, what you've heard in the last few minutes? It is the total answer, and you'll never find any other. Don't waste your time. Don't go out of here saying that you have another answer. There is no other answer. It's not my answer. It's not Juan's answer. It is the answer. And see, the trouble is, we sense that this is true, don't we? You know it. All of you have been reacting in a certain way here, knowing that this is right. Whew, now begins the hard work. Now I'll give you an idea of how you put ideas in place where they don't belong. Why on earth do you see any difference between being here in this meeting and in eating breakfast? Why do you see any difference at all in being at this meeting and in talking with your neighbor about the daisies between your yards? Why do you see any difference at all? You do see a difference. Why do you put an idea in your mind that there's any difference in being here and in walking down the street or stirring the pudding for tonight's dinner? There's no difference at all. You've still divided your world into what? Into psychological and non-psychological, into spiritual and non-spiritual. Do you see you're dividing your world with an idea? Having said that, I must say that this is different. At the same time, it isn't different. And you have to see this for yourself so that you see there's no contradiction at all in what I said. We are simply concentrating our attention, our minds at this particular moment, and for the next hour or so, we're concentrating our attention on a particular task, the task of understanding our minds in order to clear out the mess that we know our lives are in. That's the difference. But when you do this, when you have done this, when you have succeeded, then there's no difference at all in coming to a meeting like this if you're really out. Do you know a free man doesn't have to go to a meeting because there's no, this is for another reason. Because walking in the garden or chopping wood are the same thing. Because there's no idea that he must get something from the meeting. He knows he has nothing to get. You have something to get, and when you see that, there's nothing more to get. So why do you divide your life into compartments at all? Because in reality it is not. On a certain level it is. You had better divide it into, I'd better be at work at 8, otherwise you won't get a paycheck very long. That is proper dividing your world. But don't you know that if you understood all this and were living all this, that when you went to work at 8 o'clock, you would see no difference in going there at 8 and in coming here? And you could even begin by saying, tomorrow morning when I go to work at 8, I'm going to go in that office alert and awake and use everything that happens to me all day long to be more awake so that I no longer divide my world in any way at all. I would like to ask you, may I see some hands, please? Just hands. How many of you are depending on anything? I'm not talking about depending on food or your car to get home. How many of you are depending on any other human being for psychological support? How many are doing it but don't know you're doing it? See? Why do you want to live this way? Do you want to live in this insecurity and this fear? Why do you depend on anyone at all? Because it's an idea you have that this other person can keep your world in place. This nice, smug, comfortable, miserable world that you're living in. If this person will continue to behave toward me the way he or she has, this comfort, quote marks, will persist. You're not comfortable at all, are you? You're afraid and you're unhappy. Why don't you listen to this so that you can then start to do some of these things, so that you can then be in relationship with anyone you want, your husband or wife or brother or parents or whatever, so that you can be in relationship with everyone and still be free of them. This is what we're after, so that you are indeed your own man or your own woman. Try to understand, finally, that there is a way to use your mind where thought is proper. And we've discussed this many times. If you're driving your car, give thought to that. But when meeting a challenge that you feel would disturb you, why do you put a thought in there at all? Because you're trying to hold your world in place. Why don't you let your world be destroyed? What you call your world. What has this world given you? Except anxiety and nervousness. And a good deal of suppressed hostility. Right? Right. You're going to have to get over having so much hatred in you. It's tearing you apart. Hatred also being a thought, an idea for self-defense. That has to go too. When you see that shoving an idea into the vacuum does nothing for you except keep you miserable, then this will be the step, the open door, I should say, to dropping thought when you should drop thought, so that there's nothing but a blank space there when you meet a challenge. And then you're a free human being. Don't you know that it is possible to not think? There are times, when you understand this, when you don't think in the usual sense at all. Your mind is operating, certainly. But you're not responding according to pattern, according to habit, according to defense, according to fear, according to protection. Nothing there to protect. When you see that, what are you going to protect? Then you'll be able to use your whole mind. At one moment you use it properly in the kitchen, the next moment you use it properly talking to the boss, the next moment use it properly when all by yourself. So that you don't live in all these daydreams and these imaginations that give you so much pleasure and which separate you from yourself. Daydreams have to go, imaginations have to go. then you will be using your whole mind instead of just one part of it, the part called memory, mechanicalness, habit, which is always connected with mechanical emotions too, mechanical anger, mechanical jealousy, mechanical desire to strike back, to get revenge. Do any of you ever think revengeful thoughts on people? Why do you destroy yourself with that? Then you'll use the whole mind instead of part of it, and you will be a new person because your mind is new. Start with what you've heard this morning and work real hard at it. There's so many things to do, so much to be done. So many times, so much repetition of this. If you've heard this before, don't say you've heard it before. You live it. Then your life will be real exciting. You know why your life will be exciting? Because there will be no opposite of boredom to it. You're bored and tired, psychologically tired, and want a new excitement every minute because you're not living from all of your mind, but from the part that craves the reassurance that your life will continue as it has been going. The jolt you need. Will you let yourself be jolted even just a little bit here? If so, you can change. If you huddle in the corner and refuse to be jolted, you are jolted. But if you refuse to try to understand why you're jolted, then you can't get out. It's very simple. The choice is yours. Will you take the jolts? You have no idea how you can change. What a different human being you can become. Then, finally, because you're no longer contributing to your own sickness, you will not contribute to the sickness of any other human being on earth. If you are making yourself sick now, you're making other people sick, whether you know it or not. You think you're nice to them, you're not nice at all. You're giving other people what you really are, not what you think you are or say you are. This is what you give to the world, what you give to your wife or your husband, your children. When you stop making yourself sick, and you really have a conscience, and you're really moral, then you won't hurt any other human being on earth. You can't. There's one thing there. If there is you goodness, doing good to yourself, to put it simply, if you are doing good to yourself, you will do good to others, which is not going out and giving them gifts. It is being someone. It is no longer being mad yourself so that you spread the madness under the name of goodness. See? Goodness is not divided. It is one thing. Person can do good and yet be very evil, giving gifts and so on. You'd say that's good. On one level, it's good to give bread to a hungry man. But why are you giving him bread? You give him bread one day, and the next day you start a war to destroy the world. So all we have to do is change this world, and as far as we're concerned, this world is sane, and it's not giving anything but sanity out there. Then you just live. Now don't ask, please, as most people do at this point, won't life be unexciting or boring? Your life is boring now. It is unexciting now. It is dull, repetitious. And you wonder how you ever got into the messes you got into and how you're going to get out of them, huh? Life will be really exciting because you're not looking for a thing. You're not looking for a thing. There's nothing to get. You have it. And what you have is your own self-wholeness. All right. Would you like to comment or ask questions?
You mentioned the fact that you don't use your imagination. Tell me, what does this do to a creative person?
What do you mean by creative?
Somebody that, an artist or someone that writes...
No, there's the proper place for imagination, obviously, and we've discussed this. If you're going to build a house, you picture how it should go and all that. There's the proper place for imagination. But it is not to build a fictitious self. See? The right use of the particular function of the mind, imagination, instead of the wrong use of it. We use the mind wrongly. That's our problem. Let's use it rightly. Everything. Everything is right in you if you straighten it out and use it properly. We misuse it. That's the problem.
If someone does it wrong to you, then there's no place for resentment.
Why should you resent it? You tell me why you should resent it.
Well, to me, it seems like, well, I suppose you'd only be doing harm to yourself.
That's part of it. Find out why you were resentful, and you will find out you're resentful because you have been, your little precious ego has been challenged, and you want to keep it in place. See, we're always seeking to get a thrill in there. Remember that. Now, you do this tomorrow, next week. You find out when you get challenged how eager you are to get a little thrill of any kind in there. And that thrill is keeping what you call you in place. And that you has to go. When that you goes, who is there to get resentful? There's no one home anymore. But this is kind of frightening at the first, isn't it? Because you've been told who you were, oh yes, all your life, and you're not that at all. Mama and Papa started their good work on you, didn't they? Huh? And what kind of lives did they lead? You know, you were in that home. Yes. Excuse me, please. Would all of you please speak up nice and loud for the mic?
You said when you get it, that you don't need anything. You've got it. All right. I've always had this form of depression of what's the use? Because, you feel like, so I do that, it's not going to satisfy me. If I do this, it's not going to satisfy me. So you almost just give up. But I've kept it almost on the level of a depression. I had it intellectually, I guess, but not.
How much courage do you have?
I don't seem like I have any.
I ask that as a preface. Some of you know what I'm going to say. How much courage do you have to give up your depression?
I just don't think it's possible.
I assure you it is quite possible. Or none of us would be here today.
I mean, I want to.
No, you don't want to. Depression is a wonderful thing if you want to stay encased in yourself and live a miserable life. Depression becomes a drug, a drink. If you're not excited, at last I can escape. I'm not excited over winning political office, over making $1 million, over getting the new husband or the new home. If I'm not excited over that, thank heaven, I can at least be depressed. So depression becomes a very wonderful thing to hang on to. You're going to have the courage to give it up. You want the excitement without the depression, don't you? I know you do. You have to give both up. They're both on the same level. You can't have one without the other. You love your depression if you have it. You love all negative feelings that you have, or you wouldn't have them. You value them. We're trying to find out why we value them. Then see the falseness of giving value to them, after which they will fall away of themselves. Because there's something outside of the part of you that loves depression that senses the uselessness of it. Depression gives you a sense of self, to put it simply. You can still hang on to what you call you. You may not understand this yet, but this is what is in back of it. Russ?
It's just a thought.
Just a thought.
It's
With emotion.
That's a thought that you slid in front of you.
Yeah. I'll ask you all. Why don't you, please tell me, why don't you just give up your depression? Why did you just drop it? Why not? See, you don't know how to answer, do you? Because you don't see how it's caught you. You don't see how you treasure it. You don't see how you treasure hatred, for example. Okay.
Just responding to that same thing. You see, if you had no requirement for the world, you could not possibly be depressed. You put something between you and your world, which is a requirement. And depression has to follow. You can also get the titillation by putting the requirement there. That is, you can also be stimulated. If you require that you get the new home or the new husband or whatever, and you get it, then that gives you a thrill as long as it lasts. But if you don't get it, you must be depressed.
No, you come to a point where you know that there is going to be nothing that's going to satisfy you. And you come to that point, and you're depressed because you say, well, what else is there?
It's despair.
Yeah, I guess that's despair. Because there's nothing that seems to...
Let's go on another little tack on this, then we'll go on to another topic. The very idea of giving up your depression, look, come to the point, for heaven's sake. Come to the point. The point being, you just drop that depression and don't think of why you should or how you should. Just do it. And you watch how depressed you get over the idea of giving up your depression. Why don't you just... May I repeat an illustration from the other city? Why don't you just stand before the door, and inside that room of the door, the room is dark. Why don't you just open the door and step into the dark room, close the door behind you, and just stay there? Do you understand? When you get depressed, you try to do something about it, don't you? Huh?
No, I just go to bed.
Well, going to bed, you do something about it, don't you? Why do you do anything about it? Why don't you just do nothing about it? So that there is no interference of thought or emotion in there. The jolt would be incredible, but this would break depression. You're always trying to do something about it, and everything you do does nothing, right? Huh? Why don't you stop doing things? Which is the same as stop ending the mechanical movement of your mind, which always brings you to the same place. Have you ever noticed how your experiences are always the same? You meet the same neurotic people and get involved with them and wonder why on earth you ever got mixed up with them. Remember, you thought you'd learned your lesson and you really didn't? Huh? Because you don't understand that there's a way to stop thinking mechanically. And when you do that, then you will never run into the same mechanical, habitual, unhappy experiences that you run into with yourself or with anyone else. I'll tell you another thing that most of you have that you don't understand, which is standing in the way, not just depression, and that is arrogance. Do you know what it means to be arrogant? Arrogance is a defense. It's always a defense and always an offense. It will always attack. Arrogance is a terrible thing. And if you want to ruin yourself, just continue to be arrogant instead of having the courage to drop your arrogance. If you want arrogance, you're no way out. You have to give it up. Which means you'll have to be frightened consciously instead of unconsciously. Comments, questions? Let's get off of depression for now.
One thing is very hard for me to give up is hostility, because it frightens me. Frightens me giving it up. I wouldn't know who I am.
What are you doing about it?
I'm not expressing it, I'm observing it. But it's still frightening to die to it.
Thank you. Did you want to continue? Is there anyone here who is sure that they have eliminated all hostility in themselves? Is there anyone here who is pure, free of hostility? This terribly embarrassing, isn't it? To see that we're not at all nice?
It's nice.
Okay. But see how healthy it is? Huh? You've got to say to yourself, I don't care what happens to me as long as I get out. I don't care how humiliated, how shamed. I don't care what a big phony I see so shockingly I've been all my life. How I lie about everything. I don't care about that. I want out. Do this and watch how fast you go. Have no concern with how ashamed you are in front of yourself or in front of other people. Just do it. See the confusion, the contradiction in yourself. All right. Who would like to discuss something? Let's try this gentleman here this time. Loud and clear, please.
Until yesterday, I thought I knew the definition of the words arrogance and humiliation. Until yesterday, I did not know them. Yesterday, for the first time in my life, I learned the feeling of arrogance and humiliation.
Do you care to give us details?
Yes, sir. I sat with some people in a cafe and suddenly became aware of my arrogance. And then I was so humiliated, became humble, I can't even pronounce it correctly, became humble in one split second that it addled me until last night and this morning, until I finally saw and felt what I had done.
What did you learn that you didn't know before?
What did I learn that I did not know before?
Correct.
The meaning, the feeling of humility.
Of humility?
Humiliation.
Ah, that's better, because I don't think
well,
humility
I
is quite
word too good, Mr. Harris.
Humility.
Yeah, okay. That is very good.
That's it.
It's a little bit painful, isn't it?
It was very painful.
Yeah.
Very painful, sir.
Yeah. There's no way out except through knowing how pained we are. And don't you take pleasure out of being pained, which you're now doing, by the way. You take false pleasure out of every wrong state, because you don't know the difference. Cease to take pleasure in anything that is negative. How about the idea of revenge, even if it's just mental revenge? Does it give you a certain pleasure to get revenge on someone mentally? Your worst enemy, something bad happened to him? This person who did bad to you, now something bad happened to him? If you get the slightest pleasure out of it, there's something wrong with you. It still means that you divide the world into you and that other person. You still think that it is a divided world, which it is not. But hatred or revenge or jealousy, even jealousy, perpetuates the illusion of division. And you would rather have it a divided world, because then you, wonderful you, can cease to be, quote Marx, wonderful you. Give up wonderful you so that you can be free you. Or bad you. There's great pleasure in calling yourself bad at times. Yes.
This giving up of negative thoughts seems extremely difficult. It seems like more frequently you replace one with another, like
Of course.
from fear to hate to revenge to.
It's all on the same level, isn't it?
You
The
just
same thing.
Keep going from one to the other without really getting out of a negative state at all.
What you don't
You get out of
realize.
a negative state and stay out of it.
Yes, all right. But how are you going to do it? You're only going to do it when you have explored this thing. When you go out of here, you say, from now on, I'm going to work. You're not going to do it by coming here once a month or once every 3 months. When you experiment with this, when you watch your own mind at work, so that you can see your automatic reactions of envy or whatever it might be, or a sense of superiority. If I'm superior to you, then I'm different from you. I'm not different from you at all. Not really. Physically, yes. Certain exterior things, yes.
The word you used a while ago, arrogance, just kind of thinking about the word itself. I don't think anyone would describe themselves as arrogant, but it's like such a subtle word.
Yeah, okay. That is very good.
That's it.
It's a little bit painful, isn't it?
It was very painful.
Yeah.
Very painful, sir.
Yeah. There's no way out except through knowing how pained we are. And don't you take pleasure out of being pained, which you're now doing, by the way. You take false pleasure out of every wrong state because you don't know the difference. Cease to take pleasure in anything that is negative. How about the idea of revenge, even if it's just mental revenge? Does it give you a certain pleasure to get revenge on someone mentally? Your worst enemy, something bad happened to him? This person who did bad to you, now something bad happened to him? If you get the slightest pleasure out of it, there's something wrong with you. It still means that you divide the world into you and that other person. You still think that it is a divided world, which it is not. But hatred or revenge or jealousy, even jealousy, perpetuates the illusion of division. And you would rather have it a divided world, because then you, wonderful you, can cease to be, quote Marx, wonderful you. Give up wonderful you so that you can be free you. Or bad you. There's great pleasure in calling yourself bad at times. Yes.
This giving up of negative thoughts seems extremely difficult. It seems like more frequently you replace one with another, like
Of course.
from fear to hate to revenge to.
It's all on the same level, isn't it? The same thing.
Keep going from one to the other without really getting out of the negative state at all.
What you don't
Get out of
realize...
the negative state and stay out of it.
Yes, all right. But how are you going to do it? You're only going to do it when you have explored this thing. When you go out of here, you say, from now on, I'm going to work. You're not going to do it by coming here once a month or once every 3 months. When you experiment with this, when you watch your own mind at work, so that you can see your automatic reactions of envy or whatever it might be, or a sense of superiority. If I'm superior to you, then I'm different from you. I'm not different from you at all. Not really. Physically, yes. Certain exterior things, yes.
The word you used a while ago, arrogance, just kind of thinking about the word itself. I don't think anyone would describe themselves as arrogant, but it's like such a subtle word. You know.
Yeah. No, that'd be the wrong way to describe yourself, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But it's there. We don't care about the descriptions. They're all phony anyway. We want to know what we're like actually, how we really feel about something. Take financial matters. You want to get close to home? Let's get close to home. How do you really feel about financial matters? For example, do you think you deserve more money? Or you shouldn't have to pay so much money for food with prices going up? You know what's a great relief? Do you all want to be relieved for pressures and tensions? I'll tell you how to do it. Don't try to change the exterior world with all its madness. You're not going to change a thing. You're not going to change high prices of food. Because all this is on a certain level which we have nothing to do with, except as we have to buy food to keep ourselves from starving and so on. Don't try to change the world. Don't even be concerned with it. And if you say you're concerned with saving the other world, I say you're a phony. You don't even have the sense to start saving yourself. But that's a great escape, isn't it? If I don't want to face and see how much violence I have in me, I can go out and start a peace movement and pretend that I have no violence, therefore I'm a force for peace in this world. And all the time I am loaded with hatred and violence and passing it on to the world because I'm on that level. You have to have a little bit of common sense to start this, a little bit. Common sense being to see where the problem really is. Right here. Boy, then you won't have to think about the madness out there, and you won't have to worry about it, because indeed you won't really be involved in it. We keep our false identities in place by getting involved in things out there so that we can say that we're helping people and all that stuff. Now I want to warn you of something. All of you listen to this. Some of you. This is a very critical hour of your life being here. I'm serious. I'm very serious. It's a very critical hour of your life being here. Don't you dare lose what you have here. Don't you let all your usual negativities and your vanities and your pride steal what you have got here today. Don't you dare. This is your life. Do what you want with it. Don't lose it, whatever you, for your sake. You go out of here, that's the end of it. I am not responsible for your life. I'm responsible for me. We're talking about things that we're interested in. When you go out of here, you take a responsibility for your life, and don't let evil thoughts steal what you have learned here today, because they will try. You have no idea how they have taken us over. Which is why one reason we're here, we need all the help we can get. Because the world is very powerful and the sleep is very deep. And all of you are asleep. And you're not even quite sure what that means. But to be asleep means to be depressed. Means to have suppressed hostility. To want to be somebody in this world. That's what it means to be asleep. And to be a little weak coward who listens to other people. When you should be listening to the truth that is in you all covered up. Don't you listen to anyone. You're not listening to me at all today. May I tell you that? You're listening to the truth. It's not mine. Don't you listen to your husband or your wife or your mother or your friend. They're going to lead you astray and destroy you because they've destroyed their own lives. Don't you listen to anyone. Don't lose what you've got here. If you're doubtful, then work hard, read the right books, come to the meetings when you can. Don't lose it, whatever you do. Light is not only stronger than darkness, but light is everything. And all these things, your depression, all these things, I will tell you, they have no power at all. Not 1 ounce, not a bit. The light is everything, capital L, all right? What do you want? God, truth, all right? It's everything. Hang on to it. Comments?
It's one thought that when we do understand fully that the truth does not attach to me as a source, then we're always in perfect free relationship with the world. That is, you're in perfect relationship with us. There's no... It's very light, it's transparent, it's just there so that whatever thing there is in the world, whatever person there may be who is seeking it, fine. It's there if they want it. but it must come from them. There's nothing in me as a separate person that can, you know, produce it in them or lay it on them or force them to see it.
No, no. And this is very helpful if you're ever talking to another person who asks you something. If anyone ever asks you about these things, and if you have some knowledge of it, give them the knowledge, and that's the end of it. You have no responsibility for anyone else. And get over thinking that you do. On the everyday level, you better give your children food and drive your wife to the market, things like that. You're not responsible for the enlightenment, for the deliverance of anyone else. And there's a good deal of vanity connected with thinking we can save the world, isn't it? And see, the whole business falls away. The idea of guilt that you're not doing enough for your children, you're not giving them enough automobiles or whatever you foolishly give them. Why don't you give your children and give your friends a new human being? Then you won't have many friends around that'll want it. How many of you understood the meaning of when I said that you should not see any difference between being here and in working in your yard, perhaps, or working at the office? Let's put it this way. How many of you actually understand this? May I see your hand? Would you give us your explanation of that, since you put up your hand?
There's only one explanation. When you're a completely free human being, you act the same way to everybody and everything.
Where's the division?
There's no division.
Did you have your hand up? I'm sorry. Did you like to say?
If I'm awake and I have no thought,
The thought does not divide you from where you are. Wherever you are physically, you're free of it. What? What is there? Then you can come here and get something from people from discussing these things, but there's no sense that if I don't get this today, I'll be miserable tomorrow or something like that. Your whole attitude is quite different. You can't, in one way, you see, we're on the level of words and there's always an opposite to it. You can't demand to find God, and yet you must demand to find God. And there's no contradiction there at all. You must want truth more than anything else. But all right, listen. But if what you call seeking truth and God is merely your neurosis, trying to get a relief from this problem which you got yourself into because you're asleep, then that's not seeking for God at all. Find out what it means to seek truth. Which means you have to come with, what's the usual phrase, empty hands? Not demanding that God conform to what you want him to be. Because he isn't going to conform to that at all. And never has. And God is not an idea, by the way. If you put the idea of God between you and something out there, then you'll demand that God give you victory over the Germans, right? God help you kill more Germans. Or God bless your church above the rival church across the street. God has nothing to do with this. The word God, if you put it on a piece of paper, it's just some marks on a piece of paper, right? If you put it in your mind, it's just a thought. And you will know who God is when you have no thought at all about it. When you have no idea of who God is. God is not a thought, an idea. God with an idea creates hundreds of churches who then kill each other in the name of God. God is not divided. Thought is divided. When there's no thought about God, truth, reality, then there's just the whole there. There's just an understanding there. And where truth is, there you as an individual are not. Because that again would be a label. You, the worshiper of God. As long as there's you and God, the level of opposites, the level of thought, no understanding at all. When you see yourself doing a foolish thing tomorrow, or this afternoon, foolish thing, a dumb thing, in your mind or physically maybe, why don't you just see yourself doing it and then have the courage to drop the thought about it? Not drop the responsibility for it, because your thought was what made this thing happen, whatever it was. Then not condemn yourself for having done what you did, because condemning yourself will cause you to do it again tomorrow. Because this is on the level of thought, and you're keeping the mechanical thought going. And this is why you repeat the pattern every day. There is a way to use your mind without thinking about it, without thinking about something. This is the secret of the ages. When you have done something dumb, said something dumb, stupid, foolish, and you work on it properly, as I just said, this is great news, because you really, whether you know it or not, are that much stronger, rightly stronger, than you were before. But having seen yourself do this dumb thing, you now think that this is the way you are. And you carry this with you and you feel bad about it. I thought I was nice and now I have to face these people tomorrow and I'm not nice at all. If you will see that you were dumb, drop the thought. When you meet the people tomorrow, you'll be that much purer, stronger. It is wonderful to be humiliated. Sally has something.
I was just going to say, you can see how to be weak, to let others see your weakness, is really to be strong. You have the courage to show others.
All right, but tell us the danger in that so we don't make a mistake.
Oh, yes, I understand. The pouncing, you mean?
Well, no, the gratification of saying, see how humble I am, for example.
No, I mean in the right spirit.
Okay,
If you
all right.
do it in the right spirit, to be weak is actually getting strong,
yeah.
getting strength.
Yeah, that's the ending of the thought process, of the emotional process, the mechanical way.
You also mentioned how other people can so easily take us away from the truth. And I have seen this happen. We like people and we trust them and we want to impress them so much that we take their word against this pure little bit of truth that we have. I've seen it happen here.
I said don't listen to anyone.
Right, but we have to keep reminding ourselves because people are very persuasive.
Do you know why we listen to evil? If I listen to evil, it's because I have evil in me that likes it. They're on the same level. They're corresponding, are they not? I have to want to give this up. Who?
You're right on that. I used to do that. I had a lot of hostility in me. And I would take people away from many other things. And one person in this group tried to do that. Now I had to fight the urge of revenge. You know what I mean? It was trying to come up. And I had to see it, you know, that it was also my fault for my own reactions too. But you're right on that. As you say that phrase, a person that has first destroyed his own life will have no conscience in destroying the life of others.
I want that repeated.
Right.
Will you say that, Sally? And then someone else who knows it, please. This is very important as part of your whole work. Go ahead, Sally.
Anyone who has first destroyed his whole life, his own life, will have no conscience whatsoever about destroying the lives of others.
Do you understand the meaning of this, the thought of it? Do you? Do you? You don't understand that? All right, someone who else knows it that will repeat it out loud? Larry?
Instead of repeating the words, I will repeat the fact.
All right.
In my past life, where I did unconsciously asleep destroy the life, instrumental in destruction of the lives of others, because I did not see I was destroying my own.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Joan, say it again.
A person who has destroyed his own life will have no conscience whatsoever about destroying the lives of others. Or ruining the lives.
Ruining. Yes.
Well, this is really the same thing. To create my own destruction, I must be creating destruction around me in the world, because they're exactly the same thing. That is, if I believe I can get something from you, if I believe that my world can be expanded by diminishing your world, it's the same process.
Do you mean to say you don't see this?
Well, I could see a sleeping person will destroy themselves, but they're not conscious of destroying themselves or conscious of destroying you.
Well, who said they were conscious?
Well,
Can't be conscious.
they're doing it without the consciously doing it.
So?
But that sleeping person who has destroyed themselves has a chance of also waking up themselves.
Well, that wasn't the point. The point is to see that was good. There's just one state there. Maybe I better start at the beginning. Do you realize what a fantastically difficult task it is to see yourself as you are? Do you know how many lies are keeping you from seeing how terrible you really are? This is not said to discourage you, for heaven's sake. This is all good news. This is the way out. This is not said to condemn anyone. I'm saying, don't you see how difficult it is? That wall, we said it was that thick, is as thick as this room. You want to know how thick the wall is in your mind that prevents you from seeing yourself as you are? I'll tell you, it's a very simple test. Simple. Let's see if you do it. You tell me how depressed you get, how often you get depressed. You tell me how often you get envious. You tell me how often you are sarcastic. Huh? You tell me how often you get bitter. You tell me how often you feel persecuted by the world, by other people. You tell me how often you feel betrayed by people after you did so much for them. And I'll tell you how asleep you are and how you are destroying yourself and everyone else in your life. You tell me how ambitious you are to double your income. And I'll tell you how asleep you are.
But could I just say something?
Go ahead. Speak loud, please.
If you're awake, you can't follow a sleeping person. Then you become your own self.
Right.
Now, all sleeping people are following each other and destroying each other.
Right.
So then, that's why I nodded on that, because the phrase was, a person who has destroyed his own life will think nothing of destroying
That is
someone
correct.
else's.
That is correct.
But that's a sleeping person. All sleeping people are doing this to each other.
But yes, this is what the world is like.
Yes, but they also destroy. See that I come to this meeting and I know there's something right here. And I'm impressed by another person at the meeting. That person can have no hesitation about, and I'm giving this other person the right about destroying me, about destroying this little right thing. This is the crime.
If you are awake, how could you give him that right?
Eleanor, we're not awake. None of us are awake here. That's a fact. We have a little bit, and we know that this is right. Just a small piece. And it's awful easy for another person to take this. I mean, it happens all the time. But it's this little bit that we have to nourish. That's the only chance we have,
Right.
is to nourish it.
Don't you know how little
Yes.
control you have over your life?
Of course.
Don't you know that when this meeting is over, some of you may get your feelings hurt by some little thing? That is how little you are in control of yourself. You can still... How many of you can still get your feelings hurt? May I see your hand? See, you're asleep. The slightest facial expression can put you into gloom. He doesn't like me anymore.
It's a fact. An angry face can change a reaction just like that.
See, do you understand what it means that you are not living your own life? You get that much, that you are not living your own life? That you're the familiar leaf blown about by the wind, whichever way the wind goes, that's the way you go? No wonder you're miserable. You get bounced against every wall, every tree, and it's not necessary to live this way at all. If you were to put enough energy and time and attention into these things you've heard today, you can begin to reverse it. so that you know that you are someone entirely different from this person who gets his precious darling feelings hurt every 5 minutes. You get your feelings hurt every 5 minutes, you're an egotist, a pure egotist. And you're destroying yourself and you're destroying the world around you. And love is the absence of egotism and nothing else. Yes.
We touched on this a little while ago. We know words. We know the word guilt. We know the word arrogance. We know the word envy. But seeing these things in ourselves is difficult because we kid ourselves that oh yes, I know what guilt is. I felt guilty because I said this to someone I shouldn't have. But to see it in ourselves and to see how, in my case, I'll talk about me, people can make me feel guilty and I'm not aware of it. They have a hold on me. This has happened all my life with my family, where they were able to say and do certain things and put a lot of guilt on me. I have since come to realize I have done the same thing to others.
Right.
For years unconsciously.
Right.
But the difference between knowing the word and knowing the feeling, the emotion, and seeing that this is what we can have done. An angry face, the one just mentioned, but I see it with still in my relationships with my old so-called friends and with my family, that there is still, they're doing it unconsciously, but they're still doing it. The difference now is that I am able to see it. I don't have to accept it anymore.
Right. Yes.
Mrs. Phillips, when you speak of the word on any arrogance, can a difference there be my definition of the word and the feeling of the meaning of the word? Is the question clear?
No.
All right. I use many words in conversation. As I said earlier, I didn't understand the meaning or the feeling, one, of the word humiliation or arrogance until yesterday. The definitions I knew for conversation. The meaning or the feeling behind the word I did not know until yesterday.
All right, you saw it with more of yourself instead of just going mechanically through you.
I observed me.
All right, all right. Bob, would you give us something? Give us something, Bob.
Well, since trying to apply certain principles that I have learned in our groups, I feel that I have made progress with when here I am going back to comparing with family, friends, business associates. And the big thing that I have to watch now is the self-satisfaction that I feel when perhaps friends and relatives now come to me with problems, etc., and because they have seen a difference in me over the last 4 or 5 years that wasn't there before, when I feel I've had a tremendous amount of more negative emotions than I have now. And the big thing I have to watch is, boy, look what I've done.
Right, right.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is something that, this is what I've got to work on next, because I feel I've made some progress, and just the knowledge that I've made progress and maybe can talk more sensibly to friends and relatives than I used to do.
Right.
This is a real problem that I have.
We have to watch every second. Every second.
Would you comment on what is meant by a conscious wish?
A conscious wish. For a while in this meeting, and during this meeting, all of you to one degree or another have had a conscious wish. That little? Because every one of you, without exception here, has a very small part of you that does want to get rid of this terrible load of bricks you've been hauling around on your back all your life. And it gets properly aroused in a meeting like this small conscious wish to get out. However, I have spent at least, I would say, as a rough estimate, at least half of this meeting telling you how easy it is to lose what you've had if you're not awake every minute. Because this small little conscious wish to get out will get overwhelmed very easily when you get out into the world. The mistakes we make are endless, which is why we need all the help we can get out. For example, we could hear these things and then go out with the, as Bob sort of hinted there, with the great wish to be a teacher of it. Now, I've learned these things, I can start teaching other people. And I can probably make a little money at it too, huh? Maybe I can be called a reverend. So this little small conscious part of us that wants to get out is distorted and it eventually destroys us because it's taken over. And all literature that you have read about these things warn you about this, that there's a small part that wants out, but you need all the help you can get or it'll get battered around and destroyed by the world, really by our own self, but we don't know that. I will repeat once more, don't you lose what you've gained here. You've gained the truth. Why don't you dedicate, if I may use that word, why don't you dedicate your whole life, the rest of your life, to waking up? What's hard about that? That's very easy. You just say from now on, regardless of the mistakes I make, I'm going to dedicate every second, regardless of what my circumstances are, how bad they are, I'm going to dedicate my life to waking up. To change, to really changing myself. The struggle is long and hard, but it can be done. And you must make up your mind to do it. Don't listen to anything in here that tries to get you away from following this. Very few human beings even have the small conscious wish. It's very rare to have even a seed, believe me. Very rare. And that seed is in danger, to use those terms. That seed, when it's put out, is in danger from so many things. From the passing birds, from hard soil, from floods, to use illustration. Yes?
I wanted to ask about what Bob was referring to as a sort of pride, a touch of pride of being able to help others.
Yeah.
How do you handle that in yourself?
Well, what is pride but an idea again? You put pride in the place that you were somebody who can help someone else. Isn't that a wonderful distraction away from the fact that I'm the saint helping the sinner? Isn't that wonderful, forgetting the idea about myself having my own problems? See, it's just a distraction. Yes, back there, please.
Yeah, I was meeting once where a fellow who was an artist was worried about the business of creativity
Yes.
and his art and that sort of thing. And what came out, at least what I was told, was that the idea is that imagination really isn't changed in this sort of business, but that it's merely in the addition of control with the imagination.
Well, as the lady remarked, we use imagination properly. Certainly it has its place. Not used wrongly.
And we're not trying to destroy it.
Oh, certainly not. Don't destroy anything. Use in the mind, use it properly, except you want to say destroy illusion. Yes.
Emotions now. The way I see it, of course, I know nothing about this. I mean, I'm new at it.
Yes.
But the way I see what you're describing is the fact that you just turn yourself off, turn off all your emotions, sit on Mount Olympus and look at the turmoil around you.
Oh, dear, no.
No?
No.
Well, I better.
Any attempt to sit on Mount Olympus, whatever it is just another attempt to live in a dream world. You know, the only way you're going to get out of this mad world is to live in it fully without protecting yourself from it. Don't you protect yourself against that angry boss, that unfair boss. Instead, understand why you allow yourself to be his slave. Use everything that comes along. All this business of beards and stuff is useless. And incense. You know what I'm getting at.
But now, your emotions, you do have to turn off your emotions.
No, no, no. Don't turn off anything. Watch everything. See it. Turn off your that's like turning off your breath. Your emotions are you. That's a part of your life.
Yeah, but you're not reacting to this boss. How, you're not, I mean, you have to use your emotions for something.
Why do you say you have to? You are using it. What are you talking about? I understand.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm
okay,
completely
okay.
lost.
Yes. When you understand all these things, you're using your mind properly and all that, negative emotions of themselves fall away. See, you take, look, start with A, B, C, and the X, Y, Z of what to do with your emotions, the question will vanish because it's just not there anymore. You're still trying, you still think there's someone outside of you who can control your emotions, and there isn't. There's just you, which are your emotions, and you have to understand this. Then when you die to you, which are your emotions, then there's a new you there. Now, is that more confusing?
Yeah. Well, no, I think you need to see the light a little bit.
Okay. It takes time, a lot of work. Yes, one more, then we'll stop.
Well, I was just going to say in response to her question, a negative emotion is something which separates us. That is the basis for the division.
Yeah.
That's the whole wheel turning around.
Right.
So that's what we don't want to use. Indeed, when we see something, those will begin to cease.
Yeah.
A positive emotion is what connects us. Indeed, the idea of the world or of God or anything else is incomprehensible apart from a positive emotion, because that's what indeed connects the whole thing.
You understand that thoughts and emotions are very closely connected and one works with the other. That will be the official end for today. You may want to talk unofficially from now on.
Copyright 1973. No portion of this material may be reproduced or sold without permission from Bruno Associates, Garden Grove, California.